So we're going to begin to work on entering master data, but I would first like to show you what it would look like to enter master data one partner at a time or one material at a time. And I'm going to do that by going into this master data management tab and going into partners. And you can see here on the left the partners that require master data entry. And on the right hand side, you can see the messages telling me that I have information to enter. Once I complete this information, these messages will no longer be visible on each line item. So this partners list represents buyer, material issuer, ship from, and ship to. So buyer in this case would be your customer. Material issuer would be your plant or plants that you're working with from your customer. Ship from is your location or locations, and ship to is the ship to requested in the order. So each line item I could open one at a time, which is what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do that with a BY partner, which again in this case is the customer. Now, of course, I'm using a training account, so all of the data that you see today is very generic. So when I open this partner, on the left-hand side here is all the master data from your customer. So now your objective when you enter your master data is to enter your description or your ID from your system that represents this buyer. So I would add new in this case. And again, whatever code I have that represents the customer in my own system, I would enter here. And whatever description I have for this customer, I would enter here. If I don't have anything specific, I can always use what's provided to me in the system from my customer to enter on my side. So I can use these IDs in description and enter them here if I'd like. Now, as you begin to enter master data, lists will begin to be created for you to use in the future. Once you enter master data, you'll never have to enter that master data again. It'll always be available to you. So I'm going to go back to the list now with this feature on the right. Now you could enter all of your master data one partner or one material at a time, but we have a different way that we'd like for you to go about entering your master data, and it's one order at a time. We believe that that's the best and most practical way to go about entering your master data, and that's how I'm going to be demonstrating that for you today. So I'm going to go back to my dashboard. And before we start working with the orders, there's a few more features that I'd like to show you. You're going to have a new orders list summary when an order is distributed to your account that should represent all of the material issuers, so all the plants that you work with. And of course, you'll see that here. Again, in this training account, we have generic information. So I have material issuer IDs 1001 through 1005, and we have material issuers 1 through 5. Here you can see their location and the date that this order was placed in the system. You can see a column that tells you how many materials are from the material issuers and what the schedule releases are for these orders. So those are here. Now over time, the schedule release numbers are going to change. So imagine you're working on an order, you're creating delivery notes and sending the merchandise to your customer. They're going to send a new schedule for the orders as the quantities are created and sent, and over time these numbers will change. So don't be alarmed by that when you first log in. So similar to my training account, these numbers may be the same or they may not be the same. But that is why these numbers would be different, because over time schedule releases will change, and I'm going to explain to you how that works in a moment. Now if I were to click one of these orders from the main menu, which I'm going to do, I'm going to select the first one. I'm going to be brought to the new orders list. Now I mentioned the new orders list earlier from the main menu. The difference between accessing the orders list one order at a time from the dashboard versus accessing the orders list from here is that I'm looking at only the order from the material issuer. I'm not looking at at all of the orders and all of the materials. So it's basically one at a time or one material issuer at a time. And of course, in the right hand side here, you have a little bit more information as to the master data that needs to be entered. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard now, and I'm going to open the second order just so you can see the difference when an order has two materials. So you can see this order has two materials. So this is from material issuer 2. There's two orders and two different materials. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard again. If I wanted to access all the orders and all of the materials at one time, I could select this option here under OSM new orders list, or I can select this see all here in this gray bar, which I'm going to do now. And this is going to bring me to all of the orders and all of the materials from all of the material issuers. So your objective when you first start working with this new tool and your supplier account is to enter all of the master data for all of the orders that have been presented to you before you integrate with a technical integration of the order within the system. That is a process that you should follow because immediately upon integrating an order, that is a moment in time that you transition from the current system to the new system. So the goal is to have all of the master data entered so you don't have to go through that when you're integrating your order and creating delivery notes. One last comment about the orders. When you first log in, you should see all of the materials that you're currently providing to your customer here. If you feel like one or more orders are missing, you need to contact your customer. Even if there's not an existing order for those materials, they can present you with an order with no demand, which would enable you to create the master data for that material so you're prepared when an order will come to you in the future on that material. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to the dashboard now, and we're going to begin to work on the orders, and we're going to do both from material issuer 1 and material issuer 2, and then we're going to start to process some delivery notes. So I'm going to start with material issuer number 2, and we're going to go ahead and open a new order, and we're going to do that with order number 2. When you open an order, you're going to see the same view that you're seeing now on your screen. So you're going to have multiple tabs across the top, and you're going to have the order number, the material issuer, and the material number at the top as well. You're always going to be brought by default to the order header tab when you open an order. On the left hand side where my cursor is, this is the master data that's being presented to you by your customer. So this is the information they have in their system for the buyer, the material issuer, the MRP planner, the ship to, and so on. My job, again, as I explained earlier, is to enter my master data or my information from my system. And as I mentioned earlier, the best practice is to enter this information or this master data order by order, which is what we're going to do here on the right hand side of the screen in just a moment. First, I want to cover these other tabs that you see when you open an order. So the second tab is the schedule release tab. So this is the current schedule for this order with the current demand being requested. The schedule release history tab is what I was referencing earlier, where this is the order we are working on, schedule release number 1. So you can see that here. As time passes, delivery notes are created and shipments are sent, and your customer receives those quantities. They'll send a new demand schedule, and you can imagine on this tab there's going to be multiple lines over time. And on this tab, we have a feature that allows you to select one or more of these schedule releases. So you can select them here. And of course, if you like, you can download that information here. Next is the delivery history tab. And we're going to talk a lot more about this as the presentation continues, but this is basically a history of your delivery notes and cumulative quantities that have been received by your material issuer. Packaging is where you enter master data for packaging, which we're going to do in a moment. Schedule release comparison is where you can see any change in demand up or down. We don't have any comparison to look at yet, so there's nothing for us to review on this tab at the moment. It's going to be this one. So I'm going to go back to the order header tab, and we're going to begin to enter our master data now. Here's the master data along the top that's required all the way down this column. So let's go ahead and start at the top. So supplier order number. This could be a PO number that you have in your system for this order. So I'm going to go ahead and enter PO002. So if you don't have a number in your system representing this order, you can always use what's been provided to you in the tool by your customer. So you can always use the information here. So let's go to the buyer. I'm going to click on data required. A new window is going to pop up. You have the information from your customer here on the left. So your job is to enter your information from your system on the right. So this is the first time I'm entering master data, so I don't have any list to choose from. So I'm going to go ahead and click add new. I'm going to say this is my code in my system. So I'm going to say BY001. And my description is going to be buyer Atlanta. And I'm only using this because that's the location in this training here. So this is my ID and my description for my customer. You can enter a phone and fax if you'd like. I'm not going to do that for this training today. I'm just going to go ahead and save changes so we can save time. And you can see here my master data. Let's go ahead and go to material issuer. Very similar window that you see. Data from your customer for material issuer. So your job now is to enter your information. I'm selecting from the list here. And you can see as I start entering master data, lists will develop, and I'm going to show you how that benefits you as you enter master data. But I haven't entered any information for this material issuer. So I'm going to go ahead and enter MI 1002 as my partner ID that I have in my system for this material issue, and I'm going to say this is for the description St. Petersburg, representing the city or town. Next is my carrier. So for this field, this is where you can enter carriers such as FedEx, DHL, or similar carriers. I don't have any answers yet, so I'm going to use FedEx since everyone knows that name. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that here. And again, I can enter a phone or fax, and I'm done with my master data for this. So the system is updated with my master data for the material issuer, and now I have ship to. Again, same presentation. If you didn't notice, this address is the same address as the material issuer address, so because of that, I'm going to go ahead and select St. Petersburg from my list. Just to show you how easy it is, as you get to develop your master data, if you have it already entered, you just select from your list. It's that simple. Carrier, same thing. I'm going to go ahead and select from my list and save my changes. So now my ship to is done. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to my ship from. So again, this is me, my supplier account. You may or may not have a code or an ID in your own system for your account, but possibly you have multiple locations, and possibly because of that in your system, you have different codes and descriptions for those locations. You could use that type of information here, or you can use your customer code and description, and that's what I'm going to do for simplicity and for training. I'm just going to use the same information from my supplier. So I'm going to go ahead and add new. So for the partner ID, I'm just going to copy the description for my customer and enter it as my own. When you're entering information on the ship to, you will have to make a selection for your labels. And if you're printing from, let's say, a printer label, a sticky label, zebra printer, labels from a roll, one per page is likely going to be your choice. If you're printing from an office printer, multiple per page is probably going to be the selection that you choose. For training, I'm going to go ahead and stick with one per page. Now, alternative ship from is an opportunity. If you don't have an alternative, you can leave it blank, which is what I'm going to do for training today, and I'm going to go ahead and select save. So now I have material information. So this is material number 2. So again, do I have my own ID for this material in my system? Yes or no? I'm keeping things very simple for training today. So I'm going to go ahead and enter here material number 2. And I'm going to say my description is stainless steel. Do you have an MRP planner at your location for this material? Who's responsible? I'm going to go ahead and enter the username for this training account representing the material planner for this material. So again, it was Joe. Next, do I have an expiration date? So here it means, does this material require an expiration date? Yes or no? I'm going to go ahead and say yes, just so I can show you some features later on as we go through the presentation. Now, I don't enter the expiration date here. I actually enter that on the delivery note itself, and I'll show you that as we move along. So the next question, what is the weight of the material? I'm working in inches and pounds today in my account, so I'm going to say the weight of this particular material then is 0.214. And then, of course, make sure you make your selection here. So does it require a security sign? Yes or no? I'm going to say yes. Hazardous substance, yes or no? I'm going to say yes, and if yes, provide a description. So here I'm going to say toxic. Next is engineering index. So is there an engineering index, yes or no? If so, go ahead and enter it. And here I'm going to say engineering index is 1. So now this entire section on the right, every time you enter information for a new material, this is the information that you will be presented with for data entry. In our system, a blue field shown here in a red asterisk represents mandatory. So even if you don't have mandatory information, we always recommend that you go ahead and enter the non-mandatory information. Down the road with reporting and referencing, it would probably help you and your customer if you have that data entered even though it's not mandatory. So now I'm going to save my changes on this material. You can see my status message along the top has changed as I progressed here. Now I need to go ahead and pick my Incoterms. So I'm going to say I'm working with DDP. So you can search that here. Next is the Incoterms delivery location here. It's not a mandatory field, but you can definitely enter that information here as well. And now I'm finished. How do I know that everything's saved? Always come down to the bottom left-hand corner and select Update Header. This will give you a confirmation and let you know that everything has been saved. You'll notice that the status message is remaining at the top. Now this will go away once we integrate the order, but it's going to stay here until such time that I do integrate. So now I have more master data for this order to enter, and that's my packaging. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my packaging tab.